once again, it's game time snitching. Welcome to the All Knicked podcast. Your host tonight, doing a little solo action here. The boys kind of left me alone, so hey, what can we do? First the Fat Boys broke up, and now is this. But we're gonna get this thing working tonight. Shout out to all of the All Knicked Up supporters. Shout out to the guys that can't be here. Joe up from upstate. Eric from wherever you from, Eric. You from Nassau. That's what we're going to call you. Eric from Nassau. But needless to say, we're going to get it popping into our All Knicked Up podcast. Pretty good week for the Knicks here. We can't talk too bad about where we are as a standing. We're coming off of a victory over the Utah Jazz. The New York Knicks beat the Utah Jazz 118-103. We saw once again another masterclass by the pit boss, like to call him Jalen Brunson, doing his thing. You know, we basically saw those Nova boys take care of business, and that's really what they've been doing recently, taking care of business. You know, first coming into the season, I'm not sure all the hoopla surrounding whether or not the hype of the Nova connection was, you know, basically what it is. It was hype. I'm wondering if it would even work out. And now we're starting to see it actually manifest into something pretty good for the New York Knicks. A lot of big games we're starting to see from, you know, guys here and there. But just a beautiful time to be a Knicks fan, obviously. You know, in spite of having Julius Randle and OG Anunoby out, you know, for different injuries. Julius obviously for the dislocated shoulder. And Anunoby actually having the issue with his elbow. But, you know, over the last two games, he missed the Charlotte game. And, of course, he missed last night's game against the Utah Jazz. But needless to say, from what we've been noticing, maybe gone but not forgotten, but not needed at this point, because we're starting to see guys step up into their role and do what they need to do. So, you know, in saying that, you know, let's get into the one guy we should be talking about, being that we are discussing about the Nova connection, and that is this guy right here. I kind of renamed him. I didn't like, you know, the Dante Inferno became like the big thing now. You know, like everybody's calling him Dante's Inferno, and I'm like, well, who wants to do that? So I decided to rename this dude. I'm going to give him a little AKA. I'm calling him the Red Hood Sniper, Dante DiVincenzo. You know, I mean, what more can be said about this dude right now when you look at him? He's just been lights out from downtown. Last night being no exclusion from that. We saw him shoot 9 of 15 from the three-point range last night, and he just pretty much was the buster of the game. I mean, from everything, he hit everything outside of Madison Square Garden's taxi cabs running up and down the road, because the dude was lit, absolutely lit. And this is of no surprise, because when we look at what he's been doing on the season, he's hitting 43% of his three-point shots. You know, his numbers won't jump out as far as when you look at his overall season average. Excuse me. You will notice that he's not probably, you know, killing it in that direction. But as far as what he's meant to the New York Knicks over this span of time has just been uber important. You know, we can obviously see the connection that both he and Jalen Brunson have, you know, being that they were obviously former teammates on the Villanova Wildcats. That chemistry, you could just see it on the floor. You know, one dynamic, one big shot after another, a lot of great catch and shoot moments from Dante DiVincenzo. And we've seen the defense actually step up from him. You know, it was definitely, it's a great surprise seeing him actually fill that role, a role that when you think about it as far as from a Knick perspective, when we was thinking about how this team would actually mesh and gel together and the needs of this team, you know, often what's brought up is usually the two-guard position. You know, that's the one thing that's talked about the most, is who can we start at two-guard? And initially we know that Quentin Grimes was that guy. But, you know, Quentin kind of got a little bit of a headache. That's the best way you could say it. Really feeling like he was kind of shunned out of the lineup when playing in a lineup that included at that time R.J. Barrett. He was not seeing maybe the looks or volumes of looks that he wanted to get. And, you know, basically he kind of fell short of the moment. You know, I think he kind of got lost in the idea that many people took him as being this sniper, you know, this dead-eye shooter from three-point range. And, you know, that really wasn't his game. We can start to see that now. He's more of a volume shooter, you know, more of a scorer than a sniper, so to say. But we've seen a guy like Dante DiVincenzo come into this game. And as I've quoted as saying that this is probably Tom Thibodeau's best pivot move of his tenure as a Knick head coach is inserting Dante DiVincenzo into that lineup, because now what we're seeing is it really pay off. He's tenacious on the defensive end also. Just gutsy play after one play after another. Attacking the rim. The rim has always been a little bit of a Dikembe Mutombo for him. Everybody knows Dante does not finish at the rim very well. I mean, if he could actually get that going, he would be even more of a special player for the New York Knicks. But needless to say, what we are seeing is him produce in big moments. The Knicks are obviously cooking. They've cooked the entire league so far if you go from the month of January. So just need to really recognize and start giving Dante DiVincenzo his flowers as far as what his contributions have been for our team. Big moments probably would not be here where we are if for a few guys in that lineup. We always champion Hartenstein's efforts, as well as now we're seeing obviously what OG Anunoby has been able to contribute to our team. But we got to start obviously giving a little bit more flowers to Dante DiVincenzo, who once he was inserted in the lineup, it's paid dividends for the Knicks. And we went from a team that couldn't hit a fish in water literally, and now we've got a guy shooting 43% from 3-point range. We've got some answers on this Knicks squad who probably when coming in were probably thought of as being a few question marks here and there about how to fill out the team. But the team is gelling. Clearly, we see that the success is definitely showing in the standings and the rankings. We'll get into a little bit of that a little bit on later on in the program. But we're just seeing a beautiful brand of basketball, a shared ball basketball, something that we've always wanted to see. At least I know I can say for myself, I wanted to see from the Knicks. You always wanted to see a product where it wasn't a heavy isolation basketball, the ball movement, the cuts. We're starting to see guys with higher IQs play the game the way the game to me is supposed to be played. Not just go all Larry Brown here, but there is a certain etiquette to watching basketball and how it's played. The open man is always the better man to take the shot as opposed to a contested shot. And spacing is so important. I mean, I think when we recall back on this R.J. Barrett and Emmanuel Quickly trade, obviously two fan favorites. We love those guys and all the et ceteras, but for the benefit of the team and the collective, we are noticing that, guys like OG and guys like DiVincenzo are really playing the game in a way that's, more perfect for our best players, so to say. They give them the spacing, they give them, the room to operate. They're not worried about including another third person, high-level scorer as well. So, what we're basically seeing is a team gelling like a team. We look more like a team. And, that's all we've ever wanted. For me personally in New York is to have a team that you can be proud of and a team that can be very competitive. We're hitting all the notches on those two things. And like I said, the Red Hood sniper, I was about to say snapper because maybe I'm hungry, I don't know, but the sniper is in the building right now. We got to definitely give our big ups to Dante DiVincenzo and just what he's been bringing to the table for the New York Knicks basketball team. There were, a couple of incidents that let you know what Dante's becoming for this team. One was the thing, I don't know if anybody caught it, but there was an exchange between both he and Colin Sexton that stemmed from Colin Sexton actually trying to bully Jalen Brunson. This exchange happened on the court. I don't know if he took a swipe at him or whatever the story was, but, Jalen's obviously a pit bull in his own right, but Dante took exception to that. And he went back into Colin Sexton's face and, gave him the business, gave him the New York bird, you know what that means, and just said, hey, look, you know what? I'm going to start guarding you tonight. I'm going to check you full court or whatever. And, he's sitting there splashing shots in Colin Sexton's face. And, as a result, he was lit. He was absolutely lit, but it just shows that camaraderie and toughness that he's bringing to the table. And obviously he's playing for one of his best friends, that he's going to stick up for him. And New York needs that kind of attitude. What we need in New York is always grit, grime, and hustle. And what we're seeing now from Dante DiVincenzo is those things. I just want to really highlight and bring that, to the forefront of watching him develop. And he's going to end up becoming one of the Knicks favorites over time if he continues to play and have this output. I've always been a big fan, never hid that about him. Coming out of Nova, I wish the Knicks were able to draft him And the biggest question, I mean, maybe him stopping over in Golden State and playing with Steph and those boys probably helped him morph his game a lot because the dude's range is ridiculous. I mean, he is pulling up from everywhere, half court damn near last night, and having no problems actually netting. Splashing from deep. I don't know if he's the third splash brother, but he's at least he's better than Deadpool over in Washington. We can definitely say that. But big up to Dante DiVincenzo, who's definitely doing this thing and helping contribute to the Knicks' success that we're starting to see now. And speaking of Knicks' success, that's one of the things that we can actually jump into. What I'd like to call them has been the January juggernauts. When you look at the New York Knicks, they're on fire. If you don't know what a fire is, just watch MSG because the Knicks are definitely on fire right now. The Knicks are right now, as of last night, concluding the month of January, they are 14-2. I don't think nobody said that in a long time. In fact, I think it might be 1995 was the last time the Knicks could boast that kind of record in a month. Let me just run down a few things that if you didn't know about them, I'll tell you about them. In the month of January, we're talking about their first in net rating. For all you stat geeks, this is definitely heaven for you. We're also seeing that they're second in defensive rating. We're also seeing that they're seventh in offensive rating, first in rebounding percentage, and they're first also in offensive rebounding percentage and third in defensive rebounding percentage. One other thing also, the Knicks are actually beating teams by an average of 17 points. I mean, who would have thought that? 17 points, the Knicks, man, and that right there is glory in itself. And as we sit, we are currently in the third place position in the Eastern Conference. I mean, who would have said that early in the year also? Basically 1.5 games outside of Milwaukee. I mean, think about it. The Knicks went from probably, I think, over a week span, they went from being in fifth to now being in third. That's a hell of a jump for this squad, being that Philly lost last night, which nobody's crying over that. But as we sit now, we are 1.5 games out of second place with the Milwaukee Bucks actually playing the Portland Trailblazers tonight. And that's a big game. That's the return of Dame Lillard back to Portland. I'm more than sure that team, Portland, will be a little bit amped up to play against him. Maybe he'll be amped up too. Maybe the emotions are riding high. Maybe it's to our benefit if that does happen because maybe they'll lose that game, and that would also benefit us in the rankings, clearly. But, the Knicks also have a little homecoming happening also. The next game they play is tomorrow night against the Indiana Pacers. And as we are well aware, that is the Obi Toppin return home game. I'm more than sure there'll be a little buzz in the building regarding that. Obi's, was a fan favorite also, much like R.J. Barrett and Emmanuel Quickley. Also a hometown dude. So I'm more than sure that he will look to try to come out and, justify why he should have been playing instead of cursing out Tibbs in the locker room, as we've learned. But nevertheless, it should be an entertaining game. But what we've seen from the Knicks is they've just been gangbusters. That's Tyrese Halliburton coming in. He's coming off an injury. I'm more than sure you'll have the talk about who's the best point guard in the Eastern Conference, clearly, because Tyrese Halliburton is the darling of the Eastern Conference, and Jalen Brunson is now sitting as a possible candidate for the reserve as an all-star. He fell a little bit short of in the fan voting as far as becoming a all-star starter. So, I'm more than sure that we should really pay attention to that matchup. Brunson has always proven to be one of those guys that, he has something to prove. He walks around with 2 bags of Lay's chips on his shoulder constantly, wanting to actually show people that he is one of those people in the league that they should be giving more respect to. We've heard all the pundits talk about whether he's too short, whether he's too slow, whether he's overpaid. I'm more than sure he has a laundry list of things that he keeps in his Rolodex, his mental Rolodex, regarding what people have said about him during his tenure as an athlete. I'm talking way probably back from high school until now. He's probably heard all those things, but all he's done is really disprove everyone. I'm not sure Knicks fans would have a very short list who they would want to trade him for now. But when looking at him and Halliburton, that should be a pretty interesting matchup. They are two different types of players. You're talking about a lengthy pass first, has the ability to score kind of guard in Halliburton, and you also, what Jalen Brunson brings to the table. He's a dynamo as far as an ISO player. We're starting to see him now come around and play a little bit more better as a point guard, meaning as for the position, he's becoming more of a distributor and allowing guys to rock out and him coming in and trying to close out the games. And, I think that's the thing about it. He is more of a closer than he is that of a point guard. I liken him to be kind of a smaller version of Melo, in my opinion. He's able to seal the deal in games, and, he's just a tough cover. Probably some of the best footwork I've seen in a long time in the game. And, I'm looking forward to that matchup. I think most Knicks fans will. Hopefully we do have OG Anunoby back in the lineup because, they're also bringing, Pascal Siakam, who's just recently traded there. A lot of energy, a lot of high points go up when it comes to Indiana. The Knicks defense is definitely going to have to tighten up, to kind of try to contain that offense, stop the transition game. I think if you can hold Indiana into the half-court game, I think you could really benefit from that and maybe squeeze out a win. But we definitely are lacking a little bit of talent right now, as we know guys are injured. Namely, obviously, we said Julius Randle, OG. We know that we've also seen Hartenstein actually be a little bit limited in his minutes, so that is a concern probably moving forward. But he did have a hell of a game last night. Nothing wrong with him from what we can see from a visual standpoint, but needless to say, something to monitor as far as with the Knicks moving forward. But, let's give them some of those hot L's off the buffet line so that we can try to move up, get closer to Milwaukee, who hopefully takes an L tonight. So if that thing happens, what could we actually be mad about? The Knicks would be actually sitting, believe it or not, I think it would be about a half game out of third. That would just be insane. How many Knicks fans out there would have actually thought at that point that we'd be sitting in that? So that definitely. Oh, let me bring up this guy too. What up, Coach? Nice seeing you up in here again. Bring up this guy. Precious is precious. Let's give that man a little bit of his flowers too. When we first came into thinking about this trade for OG Anunoby, the first thing we talked about was just OG Anunoby, and Precious became like some butt-in joke. He became like, oh, is he going to be like the movie, with the movie about the plus size woman, or all the jokes, the Lord of the Rings jokes came out. We heard all the stuff about Precious, but however, Precious Achiuwa has a little bit of game to him. People forget that Miami did draft this guy. Miami does not draft scrubs. They always draft these guys that are hard workers and, into their fitness and bring a certain tenacity to the game. Obviously he was traded. I believe that was the Kyle Lowry trade in which he went to Toronto in that trade, and that didn't work out so well as we can see from Miami right now. But, I don't think Precious was just an added ingredient. He can give you some points in production. He's shown that he's a very heady player, tough player, got some grit. I'm sorry. Yeah, you're right, Coach. Let me verify that. We are in third. We're trying to go for second. There you go. You're right. Thanks for the correction, brother. But yeah, we're trying to head for second. But right now, when we look at it, Precious was not just some throw-in, and obviously with the injury to Randall, we're now seeing him actually have some benefit for us. He's coming to fill those roles really nicely as backup power forward. And that's what we've seen. We've just basically seen that whole next man up mentality. The thing that's been talked about the most was next man up, and probably in every sense of the word, that's exactly what this team has exhibited. Because, Julius being out, I was a little bit worried, where the production was going to come from in the lineup. How are they going to rebound? Where the points going to come from? And I'll be damned, I didn't even notice he was missing, really, when you think about it, other than when we talk about him, obviously having the injury. But other than that, the team has just still been full Biggie Smalls kicking in the door, waving the 4-4. They have not missed a beat right now. And they're beasting at a very good time heading into the All-Star break that I think is a few weeks away. But needless to say, the Knicks are pressing ahead, and my man, like Coach said, we're looking for that second place spot. We're coming. Hopefully, if we could get that number one spot, that'd be even better. But Boston, as we know, is Boston right now. Their home record is obviously giving them leaps and bounds a hell of a cushion as far as in the standings. So, to their credit, they're playing great basketball as well. But, I didn't fear them last year, and I'm not going to fear them too much this year also. The Knicks seem to rise to the occasion, and right now, I tell a lot of my Knick fan friends that, the Knick fans need to start to get over this whole idea about, who we should be getting, and that we need to window shop. We're the greatest window shoppers in the world. 50 Cent, move over. We're the window shoppers of the world, because Knick fans are forever looking on other rosters instead of celebrating their own roster. And I often tell guys that we got one. If you didn't think you had one, you have one. Jalen Brunson is that dude right now. I don't think he doesn't need to take a backseat to anybody in the Western Conference or Eastern Conference right now, because he's showing that, he's showing that night in and night out. Highly competitive dude. Just tough. I mean, his defense has been a question mark, but who takes better charges in the league than Jalen Brunson? I mean, he's just a gritty dude, and why not bring him into the mix? He's one of my topics for the night, and let's bring him in about what we've been hearing from, or about what the fans got to say about Mr. Jalen Brunson, the guy called the Pit Boss. He's running things. He's just running. He's the king of New York right now. Just move aside. No, there's no competition about that. He's the king of New York as far as basketball, the sports world. The rest of the teams suck in New York right now, so we got to definitely talk great about the Knicks and what they're doing. So the king of New York is actually Jalen Brunson. We heard it when he was in Charlotte. Basically the Knicks squad just came into Charlotte and took over Charlotte. It was heavy Knick family up in the Charlotte arena there. The Hornets didn't have a home court advantage. It was the Knicks home court. So, a lot of migration from New York is obviously down south. But, Jalen Brunson started hearing the MVP chants right in, opponents' arenas. And when that starts happening, that's a hellified buzz. Let's just give a little rundown on what Mr. Brunson's been doing lately. Over the last 10 games, we're talking 30 points, 7 assists. Once again, I talk about being that point guard that we've been looking to have. 7 assists, 4 rebounds. What else can you ask from your point guard? And he's almost hitting from what I believe that 50, 40, 90 mark in the month of January, which is, anybody knows that's an elite status stat. You're doing some heavy lifting if you're doing that for your team and having those results. But, many people will say, talk about the MVP. I'm more than sure we'll hear about Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. Joel Embiid, clearly, we talk about that. He's the reigning MVP of the league. Obviously, Nikola Jokic. When is he never not one of the better players, or maybe the best player until proven otherwise? He has the ring. He has the resume. What more you can't deny that about him as a player. But what we are seeing is that, we saw Luka. We got to bring up that a little bit. The 73 points was one of the most absurd things I've seen in watching this game for over 40-something years. That 73 was very special. It made the Atlanta Hawks look like a sieve on defense, and they should be thoroughly embarrassed shaking his hand after that game. They needed to have a swift kick somewhere in their arse, allowing him to get layups, and that led to that 73. But needless to say, we're always going to hear about those big name players, the more popular players. When you get into any kind of New York, anything, the Knicks have a certain bias cloud that hangs over their head, even amongst their own fans. When our fans are quick to point out what we don't have in a player, or say, oh, yeah, he's good, but, or, yeah, Jalen Brunson, but we need Spider Mitchell. We've heard some of these other talk show people, spew that venom about needing a star. I just ask people, why don't they look to see who we have in our own backyard? Because you have one. New York, if you don't believe it, you got a star on your team. When you look at Jalen Brunson's resume, I was discussing this earlier today with some of my Knick buddies. When you think about Jalen Brunson over the last 3 years, just go back on that resume. This is not some fluke that you're seeing from this guy. This guy is a legit star in this league. And, Yeah, let's bring that up, what you said, Coach. Absolutely true. There's very few 50, 40, 90 players. It's just, it's an anomaly stat. Look it up if you don't know about it. There's not a lot of people even, it's never happening, basically. And he's one of those guys that, is obviously showing you that he's capable of putting up those kind of numbers. That's special. And then sporting a 14-2 record. Somebody's kicking somebody's ass out of New York. That's all I can tell you. I mean, we can talk boldly about other players around the league and oh, he's not on that level. Then tell me what level he's on. Because if you have a 14-2 record, your team is excelling and ascending to the top of your conference. So this is, I put this question out. What makes him not an MVP candidate, other than that people will say it's New York and they kind of cap us down as being not as good as other franchises because they like to judge us on more of our history as opposed to our present. So what has always been the scrutiny? We heard it from Candace Parker. We heard it from Becky Hammond. We hear from the other shout-mouth heathens, Stephen A. Smith. We hear them all come out and smudge over the name of our current players. And like I said, when you look at Jalen Brunson's resume, Western Conference Finals prior to coming to the Knicks, second round of the Eastern Conference with the Knicks last season. He right now has the Knicks excelling and being one of the top-notch teams in the league. We're not even just talking about in the Eastern Conference. They're one of the top teams in the league right now. So why not him? Why can't we talk about him being actually one of those dudes that is in the MVP discussion? I mean, what more does he need to do to actually get into that discussion? He barely got into the All-Star game. I mean, it's just crazy when you think about it. I know New York fans really, I don't think the country realizes that, but the New York fans are not really into so much as, from my understanding, into this All-Star thing. We always cringe about our teams, our players doing anything on exhibition level because our fear is that what was going to happen is they're going to get injured or, there they go for the season, or like the oops, like we see with Julius Randle. You're in a mix of, it's Murphy's Law when it comes to Knicks players. You just never know what's going to happen. Go back as far as you can go. Ewing hurting his wrist. We go to KP, suffering his knee injury. It goes on and on the list of things. And like we see the accident of Julius Randle, whether he thought it was a dirty play or Miami play, which is kind of usually dirty anyway. Whatever you want to say, it's still a freak accident that happens. And then you're sidelined with no ability to have some success down the line. Because ultimately for New York fans, I think it really comes down to the playoffs and winning big as opposed to winning these little individual accolades. However, when we're still talking about the smoke of, the fanfare smoke of Jalen Brunson and why he's just a special talent. I think Knicks fans, like I said, don't go window shopping. You got to do. The question is whether or not the Knicks as an organization can actually build around this guy the proper way to give him an opportunity to actually compete for a title. I mean, when you look at it now with the Knicks, what do they need? That's a very good question. What do they need right now? Obviously missing Julius Randle is a huge piece of the Knicks. They've invested a lot of resources into making him one of the staple pillar pieces here. So, his absence clearly is an issue. If they're going to try to do anything big moving forward, and this is one of your major pieces that you are holding on to and believing in what he can do in his work ethic and his talent level, then you got to say, well, how far can this team go with what they have? Or what do they need extra to build around? We've heard a bunch of names being thrown out, but I think you do have a great talent in Jalen Brunson. He's probably one of the top 15 players in the league. So if your belief is like my belief is in Jalen Brunson and watching how he's played, I have very little doubt when I watch him in the game that the team is going to stop him, more so that he will end up maybe stopping himself. Because, the timely shots, the great footwork, the toughness, the support he has from the players. He obviously has the leadership quality. He has his Nova boys that are in there willing to, they're going to war with him. That's really what it comes down to. They believe that much in him. You hear the support from guys like Josh Hart speaking boldly about Jalen Brunson's MVP. MVP All-Star status, believing that it should be a foregone conclusion that he is an All-Star, which I expect to see it announced on Thursday that he definitely is one of them, one of the reserves. But you've got somebody in New York. I mean, don't poo-poo Jalen Brunson and look at Halliburton and say, "Wow, look at him, he's flashy," or look at whether it's Trae Young, or you're looking at a bunch of other guys around the league and you're making the comparison shop. But just go by the success. Is your team better? The answer to that is yes. Is your team gelling? The answer to that is yes. Then your team is winning a lot. The answer is yes. So the question is, when you have all those things, who is your best player? That's the question you answer. Who is your best player in New York? If your answer is Jalen Brunson is your best player, then that is what makes MVPs in this league. Guys that take teams to places they shouldn't be, and without them, you are not as successful. Because as much as we've talked about the great success of Julius Randle, two-time All-Star, two-time All-Team NBA, he's out of the lineup right now. And have the Knicks lost? No, they haven't. When you look back on this team, you got a guy like OG Anunoby. He was traded for one starter and one six-man of the year. He was out for the last 2 games, and you didn't lose a game. So you got to ask yourself that bold question: who is the reason you're winning these games? As much as I like Dante DiVincenzo, and I highlighted him, much as I like Precious Achua, and much as I like Hartenstein, Deuce McBride, all these guys, Josh Hart. You see all these guys on this team, but that's not why you're winning these games. It's Jalen Brunson. That little dude is a bad boy. And, start put some more respect on his name as far as from the New York fan base. Let's rally behind our players and start to have some belief that you actually got a really great player right now. And you got one of the top 15 players in the league, highly competitive dude. We've seen in last year's playoffs, him basically, he dissected Miami, and Miami is definitely not one of those teams that do not play defense. They're one of those teams that excel at playing defense, and yet you saw the flowers given by Eric Spoelstra when talking about Jalen Brunson and how dynamic he is, to the point he didn't want to even root for him, obviously because of the Knick-Miami dynamic of always being rivalries. But how can you not celebrate great basketball or greatness? I don't care how much you dislike a guy like Michael Jordan even, and there's a certain level of respect you got to give guys on the floor when you see them producing in the clutch moments and the tough moments, because that's how you define great players. It's not just you're doing it in the regular season. How do you play in the postseason? And right now, like I said, when you look at a guy like Jalen Brunson, he's proven to do both. So why come in this season and see his success and all of a sudden believe that that's not due to him, that it's like some fluke that you're running around with? That's not a fluke. That dude's legit. You have a legit star. Stay off of ESPN and all those other people telling you, or the bloggers telling you about who you have in New York, and just look at your ratings and look at your standings and all this other stuff that comes around with it. We got one of the better players in the league finally, and he proves it night in and night out. So, those MVP chants are well deserved, and I'm not arguing with him. That's my dude. I'm riding with him. When he first came here and I started seeing the success, before he came here, the success I saw in Utah, I always said I had no problem with him coming here because I did believe that point. The overkill in that whole statement is that he's much better than even what I thought, and much better than what I think a lot of people thought. I didn't think that he would crash here, but I had no idea that he would soar as high as he is soaring here. And I would look for him to actually, if he gets the minutes in the All-Star game, I think you better watch out for a show. I think that dude is playing at a level of I don't want to put that guy's name next to him as far as, because their styles are so different, but I'm just saying in the aspect of miniature, you are watching a little bit of the Iverson thing happen with a small guy with a lot to prove and wanting to let those trees know that he has an axe that can chop them down. And that's basically the whole mindset of Allen Iverson. He was a killer. He was a small killer. That's really what it came down to. He never feared anything on the floor. And I think when you look at Jalen Brunson, he brings that tough New York, old school mentality. He's very poised in his interviews. very savvy. He's like that old dude that actually has been around a couple times, and now he's made his settle in New York. And I paused. I lost my feed. Okay, and I lost my feed. I lost my feed. Great. Yeah. Let me make it down. I don't know what happened. Have to reboot. Believe. 1 2 1 2. I think we're back now. All righty. A little technical difficulties, but we're back in business now. Okay, we were on Jalen Brunson, the pit boss. I guess that means it's time to transition. That's all you can think about doing right now, right? Let's see where we can go. Well, needless to say, I was talking about Jalen Brunson clearly wanting him to start getting some of his flowers from our fans. Start to celebrate, brother. Hopefully, like I said, he gets the announcement and the nod tonight. Tomorrow night, I'm sorry, in the Indiana game, that he's an all-star reserve. But more importantly, what we're seeing now is that we want to definitely see us continue to win. I mean, that's really the most important thing about this, keeping him preserved and healthy. I do feel like the Knicks do need to make some extra moves um, as it pertains to some of the draft. I'm not drafted. I'm sorry, the people that are out there on the trade market. Hold on, let me get into that a little bit. Let's get into the trade market. What names we're starting to hear about as far as from the New York Knicks having opportunities. Guys, let me know what you think about some of these players that names that have been thrown out. We've heard a little bit about Kyle Kuzma being available for less than what was reported. We talk about a guy who could possibly be gotten. They can get him for one first round pick, which would be incredible. We also obviously heard about Jordan Clarkson being another person. He just played last night in the Garden. I know Eric and Joe, we had some jokes about it. The Minister Society, no, don't be drinking juice in the hood, jokes about his braids. But, he is a former Six-Man of the Year recipient. Obviously, he brings a certain tenacity to the game. He played with Julius, I believe, in Los Angeles during their rookie years. So you might have some familiarity with him and Julius, perhaps. Obviously Julius being out, so we don't know about that, how that would even work or factor in. Clearly, we know about DeJounte Murray. That's been, the person most talked about when it comes down to the Knicks. We've heard different asking prices for the Knicks as far as with, different asking prices for DeJounte. We've heard throughout the league. They supposedly are interested in Quentin Grimes. The same could be said about, Atlanta. Supposedly, this is all speculation at this point. No triggers have been pulled. But let me know what you think about a guy like Kyle Kuzma. I would not be against it if it could give you some help on the wing. I do believe that we need more wing help and depth. Obviously he starts, so that can be a little complicated. I, for one, just question the legitimacy or the length of time that they state that Julius Randle will be out. When we're talking about, I thought they needed depth to begin with. I thought they needed to add some pieces to actually bolster up our roster, because I think we're definitely a few pieces away from being an extremely dangerous team. But in looking at the totality of the roster build, I mean, I look at, we've got guys that come in and contribute. They play very tough. I do find Quentin Grimes to be a little disappointing right now. He has not captured the moment. We've heard he's been a little bit disgruntled, that he was open to wanting to be moved. We obviously heard about that in the beginning of, a couple months ago with him, coming out in the media speaking about, his role and, how he can't, basically get his game going due to XYZ, all the stories. And, he pretty much took a seat, whether people want to admit that or not. He went to the second to the bench, and he's been a little MIA since then in Tom Thibodeau's favorite pool. But it is what it is. I think that it's probably time to move on from him. You're waiting for a guy to develop a killer instinct, basically, is what I'm seeing from him. I don't think it's a talent issue. I think it's a mentality. It's not a talent issue. It's a mentality issue with him. So we're waiting for him to kind of, come into his own. I don't think the Knicks have that type of window to start waiting for players right now. I know I don't think there's an all-in move that you can go and make as a Knick organization. But I do think there's moves you can make to fill out the roster a little bit better and become more of a competitive team as a whole. Shoring up the bench, some bench scoring would obviously help. The way Dante DiVincenzo's playing, I don't think you need to replace him in the lineup at all. I mean, because a lot of people will probably look at what's out there, and when you survey the NBA, you're going to look at the two guards probably and see guys say, hey, maybe this guy can come in. I don't think that you really need a two guard right now. If it's working, you just don't touch it. I always say the hardest thing is to play in New York when you can find guys that are willing to come here and can contribute and can give you, that kind of tenacity that you need to see night in and night out. Play great defense, just man up. That's one of the things that you got to see from New York players, because the crowds will definitely realize, or the fan base, you can get exposed easily here when you don't bring your A game. Not like Michael Jordan said, bring A game. Don't bring an A game, but just A game. No, you got to bring your A game here. You can't come to New York and start wandering and not being focused on the task at hand, which is to put your full-on effort out on the floor. There was talks that Kyle Kuzma was not a great fit for Thibodeau, because they felt, Thibodeau would feel like he was having too much fun in D.C. playing losing basketball. So, which I can understand the temperament. If you're not upset about losing, how can you celebrate winning? I forgot what Tom Thibodeau's quote is, but it's about, losing is worse than winning, and it's more miserable than winning or something like that. But needless to say, it's showing that he despises losing more than anything. Um, I don't know if he's the ideal guy for him, but we are trying to be in a talent acquisition position. I think that's what the Knicks need to be in. Because when thinking about what we don't have, if Brunson was to, God forbid, suffer any kind of setback, the Knicks are just not the same team. It goes back to the same thing I said about him being an MVP at this point. You have any setback with him in this season is completely a wash. It's done. So the greatest thing you can probably do is try to, we know Tom doesn't give guys breaks. He runs you into the ground. That's basically what you see. Many people were mad about Julius being out there with 4 minutes left in the fourth quarter after the Knicks had what they felt was a significant lead against Miami. This guy's been noted. Even last night, Brunson gets hit in the face. The game is basically out of hand. Utah can't win, and he still has him out there. So the likelihood is that there's going to be something that could set him back. The only thing that could help eliminate that is if you maybe have players that can kind of be talented enough to take some of the load off of what he needs to do and be a contributor that maybe allows him some rest or allows him not to have to feel like he's logging in, all 48 minutes and whatever else would be in an overtime if you happen to go in there. It would be great just to see them be able to dial it back and get a substantial lead and maybe give these guys some rest. But like we said, we talk about Tom Thibodeau. I don't know if that's ever going to happen where he's going to be willing to rest any of our players. And, we can move into a little bit of that. Talking about rest, we can talk about this one subject, which is going back to Julius Randle being 4 minutes. Knicks shouldering the load. This is one of the good things to really talk about when you say about the New York Knicks. It's been something that all Knicks fans have probably scoured about, have disliked Thibodeau about, with him keeping a guy like R.J. Barrett in. Portland game, got injured last few seconds. He's very stubborn about not pulling guys. He has this belief, I guess there's a 30-point line that the league installed, and he's afraid that somebody's going to be able to hit a 30-point shot, and all of a sudden it's going to evaporate a 25-point lead, and, with 2 minutes left in the game, because this is really the mentality. You can be up 15 to 20 points with 2 minutes left, and this guy's going to keep his starters out. This dates back to what many people believe was shortening Derrick Rose's career. He overplayed him. Joakim Noah overplayed. This has just been the MO. These guys were walking into the mass unit constantly because he will not pull back the minutes on his starters. He believes, and I guess he has an obsession with them starting and finishing the games. And I guess maybe it's a nervous twitch that he believes that he will lose that game, and he just won't budge on that. I guess the question is whether or not you can have maybe a guy that can, kind of come in and maybe help with the blowout, I guess, so to say. Maybe that's what you need, or just at least some backup. Maybe a guy like DeJounte Murray makes a lot more sense than anything, not so much as that we can figure out where he fits in the lineup. I don't think you can move Dante out of the lineup, but man, that insurance would probably help that if you did have another dynamic point guard on a team that can kind of say, hey, God forbid Brunson ever goes down, you got somebody in there that can truly step into the gray and actually help you command some wins at that position. But right now we have Deuce McBride, and no knock on him. He's a great talent coming off the bench. Love him, but we know he's a backup. He's a backup. He's not going to start. This is not Emmanuel Quickly kind of talent that you can see in him, where if your point guard went down, you can obviously believe that he can come in and hold down the helm for a while. He's not that dude. He's proven in spot minutes and spot moments to be very productive, but I don't think we can rely on him per se. But it is a question mark. Who do you add? Who would you guys add? I mean, that's a good question to pose to the fans of all Knicked Up. I don't know. I think maybe the Knicks of Kyle Lowry was another guy they brought up, who just was recently traded, like I said, from Miami to Charlotte, maybe on the buyout market. I tend to think that that's what you're going to probably see, or we might bring back Alec Burks, which should make a lot of Knicks fans a little pissed off. He was our starting point guard 2 years ago. And yes, for those who think that's a joke, that's not. That's actually serious. He was our starting point guard at one point. So Thibodeau has the belief in him. Who knows? Who knows? But even prior to this guy getting injured, meaning Julius Randle, I always thought the Knicks needed depth, and even more so, we're now starting to get reports about Julius Randle, hence the title, Knicks shouldering the load. For those that are unaware, Julius Randle suffered what is believed to be, and I say that in quotes, a dislocated shoulder. Anyone knows anything about the Knicks front office, they're not very revealing and forthcoming about their injuries or anything. This is a very tight-lipped front office. Basically anything you hear, if it's not from Woj, you can just pretty much, count it as you doing your own reporting. It's just rumors because they have no leaks in that front office whatsoever. But from what we've been told, we're hearing that Julius Randle does have a dislocated shoulder. That's what it's being deemed as. From what we've known is that he's obviously had an X-ray the night it happened. He also had an MRI the night it happened, and lo and behold, nothing was released. So we know none of the results of that. So we move forward, and some of the reports that we've come out was that he obviously had the MRI, but he was also seeking another opinion. I don't know how you really judge when hearing that. I mean, when I hear second opinion, that usually means you didn't like the first opinion. The first opinion could be that you have to sit out the rest of the season or require surgery. I mean, that's probably pretty much the two options that you could hear, or maybe the time frame was longer than what is expected. We saw the injury. One of our pod members. He has medical background. He thought it was a torn pec when he first saw it. Many people believe it was a dislocated shoulder the way he was holding it. I guess you could see a little bit removed off the shoulder. I don't know. I mean, it's kind of hard to tell. He was pressing the front part of his chest as well. It could be anything at this point in junction, but that's the thing. We don't know. We won't know exactly what's going on. But I like to read between the lines of stuff and also research stuff. You can research about dislocated shoulders and what they mean and what they entail. Well, you can learn the one thing about dislocated shoulders is that it takes a certain amount of time before they actually can heal up. You're talking, some people have said it could be 2 weeks in a sling. It could be 12 to 14 weeks as far as recovery time. So at this point in juncture, you have no clue as to when it could possibly be done or healed up for him to come back and play. And then what condition can he be in once he comes back? The one thing we're learning about dislocated shoulders too, I believe, is that it can recur easily if he does not get it with any kind of surgery. That, if he doesn't get it surgically done, then it can definitely, be a thing that can reoccur down the line. So a lot of questions regarding, the status of Julius Randle and where it lies. Hopefully it won't be something too crazy. But needless to say, I mean, you got to talk about at least getting some sort of insurance involved with that. Do we bank on him coming back full strength, or being able to, help us out down the line, whether it's something like the playoffs come around. If he's out until the playoffs, what kind of shape and condition will he be in coming in to the playoffs? Maybe not great shape, obviously. He's going to take some time to get back into the conditioning and all the et cetera that goes along with that. So, needless to say, we don't know about the recovery time. We don't even really know what the condition is that he's dealing with. A lot of big question marks. I don't know. I just think before that, like I said, I thought the Knicks needed to make a move to begin with. And now that one of your biggest guns are out of the lineup, and granted they've not missed a stride. We see them still coming out, basically taking over whatever floor that they're playing on. Guys are playing tenacious basketball, very fearless brand of basketball. But make no mistake about it, Julius is an all-star. Julius is a two-time all-star and probably will be a three-time all-star this season. I wonder if he will get voted in by the coaches, but I don't see why he would not. But you're talking about a guy who's probably a three-time all-star, and you're missing that 20 and 10 point production. Sans the other little things that we deal with as far as him with the turnovers, and the little things that we obviously pick on Julius, not so much about, but that we kind of scrutinize him about. But make no mistake, those points, that production, and the way he's actually been playing very good with Brunson, not doing too many erroneous things. We obviously needed his defense to step up a little bit, but in his absence, it will be missed down the line in the long term effect. You might be able to salvage games in which this season teams maybe not putting their full effort out. The one thing about Tom Thibodeau team is that they're going to bring tenacity every night. He's not a lackluster coach whatsoever. But needless to say, the Knicks may be able to float a little bit during some of these games. They have a little homestand coming up. They have a 12th strongest strength of schedule coming up for this next part of the season. Who knows? Right now we can't complain. They're winning. They're playing a winning brand of basketball. There's just, no matter who you've seen them play against, we've seen them against Minnesota, we've seen them against Denver, we've seen them against Philadelphia, then we've seen them against the lowly teams that we see that they're not, not on their level and they're handling their business. So I don't know. It's kind of hard to judge. What kind of danger are we in at this point? Because it really comes down to the playoffs. Obviously you don't want to slip in the rankings. I don't think you want to probably end up facing Boston in the first round if you're anybody with their hellified home court advantage. So, the Knicks being in that top four is very important moving forward. We saw it last year. It means something in the first round, not means something in the second round, because obviously we had issues with Miami and having that production only come from Brunson at that time. The rest of the team struggled, and those are answers maybe you don't have to deal with this year, being that Miami's fallen off the ledge. But another team, maybe say like Milwaukee with their length, or I don't know if Cleveland. I don't think I buy Cleveland being a dangerous team anymore. As far as, even though their record is saying they're great, they say that every year. It doesn't mean nothing in the end. Really, we're chasing Boston. That's, in my opinion. I think when we think about where I believe the Knicks stack up in the Eastern Conference, and looking at the totality of the conference and the teams, I don't see many juggernauts. It's been really Boston. Embiid's now hurt, seemingly once again, or whatever. So we don't know about the health of him, and we know Maxi's been out as well. Miami falling off the cliff. Now you're talking about a team like Orlando. How much fear do you have with them moving forward if you had to face them in a playoff situation? But make no mistakes about it, Julius is going to be thoroughly missed when it comes down to those kind of situations where you're waiting for somebody. You're going to need your best player is going to get trapped, and they're going to try to take him out of the game. So will a guy like Julius not in the game? That makes it even more easier for them to play against Brunson and the rest of those guys, because you're going to need at least 3 high-end players when come playoff time. The question is, do you wait? Can we buy that this guy, according to the limited amount of reports we're getting, is it a few weeks away? As I told someone before, they said, oh, it's not months, it's weeks, but 4 weeks make a month. So, are we talking 2 weeks? Then we're talking weeks. We're getting past the 3-week mark. The 8-week mark, we're talking 2 months. I don't see, if, like I said, we're talking second opinions. We're told that, it's not as bad, but it's not as great. I don't know. I don't trust this front office's ability to be very transparent. I liken back to a lot of the injuries we heard in the past. Mitchell Robinson went from having a foot injury. It wasn't broke, then it was broke, and then he's out for the season. Then we hear he's back before the season. So, it's just a hodgepodge of different things that we have no clue as to whether or not where Julius is going to land here. But, we're all wishing him well, obviously. We need that production. And I do think, like I said, the Knicks need to start thinking about moving ahead and making a move just for some insurance purposes. We've heard basically still about Bruce Brown. This is one of the guys that just won't disappear. Heard a lot about him. I don't see the need. It seems like a redundancy as far as I'm concerned. I don't know. There's probably some names out there we may not be aware of that they have their eyes on. But like I said, this front office has always been very closed-lipped about some of the transactions, which are understandably why. So they would be. But I don't know. DeJounte Murray, I don't know if it's an ideal fit, but it's a talent fit. And I don't think that we can afford not to acquire talent. And like I said, a guy like Kuzma's out there. When the prices are low, I think that these are positions that the Knicks need to start thinking about making moves on, so we can, just shore up our standings and try to compete at a high level moving into the playoffs. Because that's when it's the most important. Kuzma has a ring. I mean, it might be a bubblegum ring, but it's still a ring. He can give you easy buckets. He finishes great around the rim. These are great attributes that I think that the Knicks could use, especially if Julius is not ready. If that guy's your option A, I mean, how can you really argue about it? He can give you the numbers and the production, and probably be even a better fit along the sides of a guy like OG Anunoby. If those dudes are your wings, you're going to win a lot of games and be a difficult matchup come playoff time. And then on the defensive end, if you believe Boston is the gateway to get into the Eastern Conference Finals, then you got to have some sort of answers for a guy like Tatum and Jaylen Brown. You might can neutralize a little bit of KP if you have enough bodies, but ultimately it comes down to you're going to need that wing help to kind of negate that, because it's a pretty even matchup when you think about the rest of the dynamics. If Julius is not in that lineup, they have a great advantage at the wing. So we'll see about that. One guy I wanted to talk a little bit about. I don't even know if I got even a ticker about him, but we'll talk about him. Hold on, let me create a little ticker about this dude. So it just seems to be that every month this dude keeps returning back. In case you missed it, yes, Taj Gibson is once again a New York Knick on a 10-day contract. They might as well just make him the mascot at this point. I mean, what else are you gonna do? I mean, the pride of New York. He's a local dude, very well respected in the lockers of every team he's ever played on. And this is Tom Thibodeau's. This is his crutch. His support animal. No offense, I know Taj is not an animal, but anybody knows that this is his Linus blanket. Taj is always going to be around a Thibodeau squad one way or another. We thought that we'd see him in some sort of coaching capacity. Excuse me, and we have not seen that. But lo and behold, last night it was really nice to see the fans kind of serenade him to get into the game, which Thibodeau must be getting soft because he actually did put him in the game, which was a funny thing. But he didn't have any points, but it's just all kind of awesome, and I get the whole nostalgia of having a homebred dude still sticking around at the age I believe he's 38 years old. I want to show you can hit a couple threes. Good locker room dude, always that high character guy. Something fun for the fans. We know he's not going to get 500 minutes, although with this coach we never know. He might be starting center. If Hartenstein goes down, he might be the starting center. You just never know. But shout out to Taj Gibson, class act personified. Can't be mad at the end of the bench signing. Who knows? He's definitely a good tutor for any of those young dudes. He's a all-time professional, and I don't think you can never not have enough character in your locker room, especially when these hard times come around where you might go on a losing streak, and you need that voice of influence in your locker. And Taj has always been that. Big up to him. Go get your money, bro. The AARP's checks aren't the same probably, so you might want to go get you a little extra 10-day deal and see where it lands you. But lo and behold, I made it through an hour, which I think is kind of incredible. That means I either have a big mouth or we had a lot to talk about, which don't make any jokes because it could be both. But it is the Knicks, and I talk passionately about my boys all the time. Win, lose, or draw. That's my team. Those are my dudes. So shout out to some of the supporters on our fan page. Like I said, Coach, you're always in here, on our fan page, but you always tune in on our YouTube, which is big ups to you on that. Shout out to Bob Greenberg. That's my dude. Shout out to Bob Bouchard. That's Terp. What's good, my brother? Shout out to Put Two on Me, Jonathan Clark. What's up, dude? Jason Brown, another contributor. Don Dillon. Big up to you guys. June 1, June Care. Much love to all you guys and supporters. Craig also. I don't know what happened to Craig tonight. Craig, you're usually in here like riding shotgun, but Big up to Craig West. Big up to Upstate Joe. Come back next week, definitely. Eric, I don't know where you at. I think you in this where we are right here in this background. How you guys like the background? Give me an idea what you think about it. Just a little something I put together. Trying to be professional here. We'll see where that goes with us in the long term. But yeah, that's pretty much it. What up, John Cicerani? Big up to you, former member. Yeah, so yeah, a lot of things to be excited about for this time for New York Knicks fans. Let's hope that we can keep this hot streak rolling. Let's steamroll the Pacers tomorrow. Nothing wrong with ever beating the hell out of one of our rivalries. Um, just an important time. Support this team, man. I mean, that's my biggest message. Come out and support your dudes, man. No more window shopping about we're not as good as somebody. We're as good as we are right now. It's time to start poking out your chest and being very supportive of the Knicks. You're a Knicks fan. You can't have these media pundits talking trash about your team. You can do all the other energy on Twitter to get at players when they miss layups. You should be getting about guys that are talking smack. I mean, we saw what happened with Candace. Dudes really, the Knicks fandom just basically went out and said, hey, let's defend our boys. You don't know what you're talking about. And a lot of them don't know. Shout out to Perk, who seems to be one of the few Knicks supporters on TV. I mean, he basically he's been bully about the Knicks for the longest time, and he's been absolutely correct. And he's just been on full press mode, trying to give us our flowers. Jamal Crawford, another dude doing that. It's nice seeing guys step up into the media and talk fondly about us. We're no longer the joke of the NBA anymore. Those years of, waiting for the next bottom to fall out and talk crap about, oh, the Knicks aren't this, they're not going to be that, et cetera, et cetera. But right now you're winning, and you got to celebrate winning and have some belief that the work that's being put in by these guys is legit and it's working. I don't want to hear any they won and have an asterisk next to why they won. Oh, a team coming off of, a long schedule. Look, there's nothing in the league. They don't do that for the Lakers. They don't do that for Charlotte. They don't do that for Boston. They don't do it for any other squad but the Knicks, where they have to just take this little nudge to say we won because of this, and not just because we're a damn good team right now. We're blasting dudes out the gym because of a reason. We're that damn good right now. Whether it's sustainable, whether it's all year, whether we win a title or whatever, it's time to just still start talking great about our team for once and have some pride and wear these colors the right way. Wear them like that we are in the building right now, because other teams are knowing we're in the building. You think the rest of the league is not taking the Knicks serious? Then you're lying to yourself, because they smell it coming. They are very worried that the Knicks get another piece, and they decide to actually be very important in the league and a headache, because they're a headache right now. The Knicks add another player, a substantial player, watch out, because we're going to be in the business of kicking somebody's after that. But needless to say, I'm going to wrap this one up. And hopefully next week, I should say, we'll be back with the whole Voltron team. Although we're going to be with 3 Lions. Hopefully we can make the robot work. But once again, you can always find me on Genius Scribble. That's on X, Twitter. You can also catch me always on our All Knicked Up fan page, trying to do our end of the game recaps from the night prior. I did none for the last couple of nights. I like to be very genuine. When I don't watch the full game, I don't want to talk about it. So I definitely like to be authentic when discussing the game in its totality. But needless to say, we're not going anywhere. We're trying to do one of the best jobs at talking about our favorite team. Like I said, next week, hopefully, we're going to think about I'm going to put it out here to the guys. Hopefully it doesn't manifest itself. But to talk about some trade deadline stuff, we're trying to put together a show with that. And see where we lie. Hopefully no trades happen in between that. If so, obviously we're going to discuss them. But, we'll be approaching at least around that time, like what kind of deals can maybe the Knicks get done to help better our squad. But what we're going to do is we're going to call it a night. My name is Ty. And you've been watching the All Knicked Up podcast, and we'll catch you next Wednesday. Have a good night.